Hello and welcome to this Masterworks performance, this live stream we are bringing you of the Mozart Sinfonia Concertante and Brahms' Second Symphony. I'm Andrew Crust, VSO Associate Conductor, and I'm joined here by our two soloists who actually also happen to be members of the orchestra. We have Nicholas Wright, Concertmaster, and Hung-Wei Huang, Principal Viola. I'm really looking forward to this week. I have been for a really long time. I think as string players, everybody I know, their favorite composers are Mozart and Brahms, or at least they're in that upper echelon, right? It's so enjoyable to play. Before we talk about the music, I want to get the clinical stuff out of the way and learn a little bit about your background, which I know, but I'd like to learn more. So maybe each of you, where are you from? Where were you born? Where did you study? We'll just get it started off in that way.
Sure, yeah. Equally, I'm super looking forward to this week. So I'm from England. I was born in the north of England, but I studied in London at the Royal College of Music. And right after that, I joined an orchestra in London, the London Symphony Orchestra. And then, many years later, I ended up in beautiful Vancouver.
What year did you join the orchestra?
I came here in 2011. Yeah, time has flown.
And your 10th anniversary was during a very difficult year. But
Very difficult. But it's, here we are on what is it today, the 16th, I think. I think that we're looking hopeful. I think there's that we're moving past this, so fingers crossed.
And Hung-Wei, tell us where you're from and where you studied.
Well, first of all, I just joined the orchestra last year, so I'm even more excited to play with Nick and then to work with you. Well, about me, I was born in Taiwan, and then I went to school in the States, the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, and then the Juilliard School in New York. And after that, I started working in Hong Kong Phil as principal, and then I was also principal at Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra in Korea. And I was guest principal for London Phil, Royal Philharmonic, and then also with London Symphony. I don't know, maybe there's a chance that I already seen Nick in London, but maybe he just didn't remember me. But why should he, right? And then after, I was actually a guest professor in Korea, in Korean University of Art. And when I was a professor, I won this position in 2020. Mm-hmm. And I moved here over a year ago. Wow, it's already been a year, and I have been enjoying this place very much.
And so for both of you, was that was your first position in Canada? Was the audition your first time ever working in Canada, or had you been here before doing other things?
For me, yes, it was the first audition that I'd done, but I'd been here many, many times. My wife is actually from Vancouver, and I met her a long time ago. So we used to come here probably every year, actually. So I knew the city really well. And I'd come to listen to the orchestra before, and so when the opportunity came up, it seemed like a very natural and a wonderful opportunity to take. So, yeah.
Actually, it was my first time in Vancouver, and for this audition. And then the thing is, when our personal manager, also the principal timpanist Aaron, when he introduced me and he took me to the School of Music and he took me to Orpheum, it's when I walked onto the stage, I told him, I think I know this place. And then he told me, actually, you probably came over 10, 11 years ago. The Seoul Philharmonic actually played here. So I don't remember I actually came to Vancouver until I stepped on the stage I played. So I have been here before, and it seems it's more amazing to be here again.
Yeah, it's often like that, right? Like when you're doing a lot of touring, you realize you realize you've actually been to that place before. You have no memory.
It's kind of like rock and roll tours, right? It's just a fog of every different city. It's hard to remember.
Be like that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, for those people at home who don't really understand or maybe want to know more about what is a concertmaster, why do you get your own walk out? Why do you have an interesting title that's different from everyone else? And then at the same token, what is a principal viola? What are your roles in the orchestra different from a section position?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my kids always joke that it just seems like my role is just walking on stage late. Which is, I guess that anyway. That's sort of that's the bit that maybe the audience see and recognize the most. That's just sort of tradition, I think. I come on and tune up the orchestra, but I think the role of the concertmaster. I mean, primarily we have very similar roles in the sense that I'm the principal of the first violin section and Hung-Wei of the viola section. But the concertmaster role is considered a little bit more all-encompassing, I suppose, of the whole orchestra. And I guess, I just see it as let's say, like a support role, really, for all of my colleagues on the stage, in whatever way that means. It can be, there with a little gesture to help the timing. It can be thinking about kind of the preparation for a concert, which I'll be taking the music and deciding whether we're going to go down bow or up bow, and making those decisions ahead of time based on the music and the phrasing, and then I'll pass that on to people like Hung-Wei, who will then have to decipher what I've done and come up with the best for his section.
Well, the thing is, like, I think you are doing more than just supporting. For me, his position or what you have been doing actually means a lot more than the people who are watching. It's not just deciding down or up. Yeah, it's giving us a direction that we know what to do, and then also shows that you know this piece. You know the music before us. I mean, if you don't, then we feel lost too. And for me, a concertmaster, the position of concertmaster is not just walking out to an orchestra and then start. It's not that. Well, no offense to you or any other conductors in the world. I have performed and then work and perform many concerts without a conductor, but never without a concertmaster. So for me, you know how important you are, yeah? With that being said, for me, being a leader of, being a principal viola, so-called people, the leader of the section, I actually don't think I'm leading them, especially in this orchestra. Like, I have a wonderful section, and I feel they are just as well trained and educated as me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just doing my position, my job, because I'm there.
Right, you're in that role.
Yeah, the role that I'm supposed to, the responsibility I'm supposed to fulfill. Right. And I think all my section players, they are capable of doing my position. It's just that right now I've been chosen to do it. So I think I should do well. And also being a leader, I don't feel I'm in charge of them. I just feel I should take care of them. Take care of people that's in my charge.
You're so humble, both of you. I mean, and it's true what you're saying, and it's true for a conductor too. But it's amazing sometimes too. People might not know that exactly where your bow is and the instrument, and they're all watching. The whole section is watching you for that. And so if you're right at the tip, or if you're over the fingerboard, that's also modeling, right? So they're always one eye on the principals, one eye on the music, and then another eye on the conductor, maybe if I get a chance.
And that's why we're positioned in the seats that we are at the front of the orchestra, so everyone hopefully has a good sight line and connection. Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys, when you play together, it's a beautiful chemistry to have you guys playing principal. Of course, as you said, all of the players are great when they're in a principal position. But let's talk about the Mozart. So, usually a concerto is one instrument, and oftentimes it's a guest who comes in from an orchestra. They're a soloist maybe, or maybe a concertmaster. They don't know the orchestra very well. But in this case, it's a double concerto. You two know each other very well, and you know the orchestra very well. So, how is that a different experience from just playing a solo concerto?
Well, I think it's amazing. First of all, I think the piece is just one of the most perfect in the repertoire, and I'm so excited to play with Hung-Wei. But I think even from the title, Sinfonia Concertante, it says so much about what this is. It's so collaborative. It's of course it's a lot of fun to play a big solo violin concerto and whatnot, but this the way it's described even just suggests the role that it encompasses so much of a symphonic role. Concertante is not really is a solo aspect, but not one solo. Is it a double concerto? Who knows? It's a sort of blend of so many things, and I guess it's kind of it represents a little bit where Mozart was at the time that he wrote this, a period of change and sort of experimentation. So there's a lot of interesting things going on. In the orchestra, there's no clarinets, no flutes. Perhaps there's two horns and two oboes, and
the violas are divided.
The violas are divided into
yeah.
two lines, which adds a sort of extra sort of richness to the texture, but. It's so much going on, so much dialogue between us and also with the orchestra.
Yeah.
Well, because since you're talking about the time of change, well, I for me, like the dialogue between us, I really believe it was a dialogue between him and his father, and then quarrel, and then just depressed, or all this complaint that's back inside. And then the piece was published in 1779, which a year after his mother died. So for me, this has a lot of emotion. And then with Mozart, being such a person or such a genius, I don't think he actually showed his emotion in music unless it's serious. So when you hear something painful, that he was very painful. I really feel that way, right?
The second movement, especially, is that feeling.
Yeah. So I really feel. Well, I think our conversation will be fun.
Yeah, it feels always to me like a little. It's like we're two characters in an opera, and we sort of have this amazingly long aria that happens. It's just there's so many themes, especially in the second movement. There's so many ideas that he brings in, so much conversation, and I pass something to you, you pass it back. It becomes this sort of endless melody.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this intertwining of voices, and I mean the second movement it's unusual for a concerto. It's really full of so much emotion, and the lines just building and getting higher and higher. But the cadenzas are also interesting because usually it's a solo. You have complete license to do whatever you want. But in this one, he decided to have a cadenza in harmony, right? And so these little details, like where to place the grace notes and all of these things, you must have spent a lot of time together working all of that out. How was that?
Yeah, right. I mean, normally with a cadenza, well, very often, let's say with a cadenza, the composer would simply not write it. They would just give you license, as you say, to improvise. And then over the years, other composers, other instrumentalists have taken it upon themselves to write sort of standard cadenzas that maybe people choose from. So it is a little bit more unusual to see a cadenza actually written out by the composer. And then, of course, it's Mozart, so it's wonderful and it's the best one. But yeah, no, it's that's another element. It's so much fun, to get to practice with Hung-Wei is awesome. It's it can be a tiny bit lonely sometimes if you're preparing a solo on your own. You have yourself in a practice room and until you get to the hall. So it's nice to meet up first and practice it.
That is really nice. You have a comrade like on the process to sort of check in with. It's the same thing as a conductor. You don't really talk to many people about it until you're there in front of the orchestra, and so it's nice to have that process. So that, the worst part about this week is that both of you are not on the Brahms with me, but I've had plenty of concerts with all of you, and this one's going to be wonderful. And so we go from Mozart into Brahms, and there's so many connections for me between the two. I mean, Brahms owned his manuscripts. He was, for a long time, obsessed with Mozart, as everyone was after his time. This symphony for me is, his first symphony took 14 years to complete. He was just worried about the shadow of Beethoven. Can I create a good symphony? So his first symphony it's epic and dramatic, but this one, it's lighter. It's more, he actually made a joke to his friends and said, this is going to be my most serious composition. It should be wrapped in black paper like you're in mourning or something. It's all a joke, right? It's in D major. It's the epitome of joy, just like Beethoven's Ninth. And but it's got a lot of emotion in it, but it's also Brahms obsessed with form and with little thematic elements that appear absolutely everywhere, sometimes buried in the second trombone or something like that. So it's this perfect blend of intellect and emotion. So I think it's a great pairing. I'm really looking forward to performing it with you. Thank you guys for chatting.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.